The Grand Assembly Hall of the Sovereign Collective stretched across 17 kilometers of polished obsidian floor, and right now, every single one of those kilometers was filled with the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. Chancellor Vrixtal stood at the central podium, his four mandibles clicking with barely contained rage, his ceremonial robes shimmering with the colors of impending warfare. And the human? The human was lighting a cigarette. Did you hear what I said? Vrixtal's translator implant struggled to convey the proper amount of indignation. His species, the Korthax, had conquered 47 star systems through sheer military might and strategic brilliance. They did not appreciate being ignored. Ambassador Marcus Webb exhaled a thin stream of smoke, squinting through it at the towering alien figure before him. He was short by human standards, maybe 5'7", with graying hair that looked like it hadn't seen a comb in 3 days. His suit was wrinkled. One of his shoes was untied. He looked like someone who had just woken up from a nap in his car. "Yeah, I heard you," Marcus said, flicking ash onto the pristine obsidian floor. "You're declaring war. Very dramatic. Love the light show you guys did with the holograms." The exploding planets were a nice touch. Vrixtal's primary eyes bulged. His secondary eyes narrowed. His tertiary eyes, the ones usually reserved for reading emotional subtext, simply closed in what might have been the alien equivalent of a headache. "This is not theater, human. This is an official declaration of hostilities between the Sovereign Collective and your species. We have mobilized the 5th, 7th, and 9th battle fleets, over 4,000 warships, each one capable of glassing an entire continent. We have given you term. Surrender your outer colonies, submit to collective authority, and provide tribute of 1 trillion credits annually." He paused for effect. "Or face extinction." Marcus took another drag. "And what's behind door number 3? There is no door number 3. Shame, I always liked game shows." In the observation gallery above, species from across the known galaxy watched in various states of shock, horror, and what might have been second-hand embarrassment. The Pixari delegation, delicate moth-like beings with compound eyes, fluttered nervously. The Grom, massive silicon-based life forms who communicated through seismic vibrations, had stopped rumbling entirely. Even the Yithkal ambassador, whose species was notorious for finding humor in planetary disasters, seemed uncertain whether to laugh or flee. "You understand that we are serious?" Vrixtal descended from the podium, his 12 feet of height and 4 arms making him an imposing figure. His talons clicked against the floor as he approached the human. "Your species has existed in our space for barely 200 years. You have 17 colonies, 63 stations, and a combined fleet of perhaps 300 vessels. You are insignificant. You are outmatched. You are, and I say this with all due respect to the cosmic order, absolutely doomed." Marcus nodded slowly. "Okay, couple questions." "There is no time for questions. First question, how long have you guys been planning this?" Vrixtal's mandibles clicked in confusion. "What? The war declaration? The whole production? How long did it take to set up?" Genuine curiosity here. The Chancellor looked at his aide, a smaller Korthax named Pelrim, who shuffled nervously. 3 months of strategic planning, 2 months of fleet mobilization, 6 weeks of intelligence gathering, and 4 days of rehearsals for this ceremony. 4 days of rehearsals? Marcus looked impressed. For a declaration of war? That's commitment. Respect. You are mocking us. Little bit, yeah. Marcus found an ashtray on a nearby diplomatic table and stubbed out his cigarette. Then he pulled out the chair and sat down, completely ignoring every protocol about standing in the presence of the Chancellor. "But here's my second question, and this one's important. Did any of your 3 months of strategic planning involve actually researching humans? Like beyond the basic census data?" Vrixtal's aide stepped forward. "Of course we did research. We know your military capabilities, your resource production, your population distribution. We know you have primitive kinetic weapons, basic energy shields, and slower-than-light communication systems. We know you're a young species that stumbled into space travel through luck rather than proper evolutionary development." Right. But did you read any of our history?" The two Korthax exchanged glances. The aide cleared his throat, which sounded like grinding glass. "We reviewed your species classification documents. Carbon-based, bilateral symmetry, omnivorous, average lifespan of 85 standard years. Homeworld, in the Orion Spur." Marcus pinched the bridge of his nose. "Oh boy. Okay, so that's your history is irrelevant to military calculations, is it though?" Marcus stood up, stretching. His spine popped audibly. Several alien observers flinched at the sound. Because here's the thing about humans. Chancellor, we're really good at war. Like disturbingly good. It's kind of our whole deal. Your fleet is outnumbered 13-1. Yeah, that's about average odds for us, historically speaking. Marcus started pacing, hands in his pockets. See, on our planet Earth, we had this period called recorded history. About 10,000 years of it. And you know what we did for most of those 10,000 years? Rextal said nothing. We fought each other. Constantly. Over everything. Land. Resources. Ideology. Religion. Who had the better economic system? Who wore the wrong hat? We got really creative about it too. We invented thousands of ways to kill each other. Swords, spears, arrows, guns, bombs, missiles, chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. We burned entire cities. We sank whole fleets. We fought in deserts, jungles, mountains, oceans, and frozen wastelands. This is supposed to frighten us? Oh, it gets better. Marcus grinned. It was not a nice grin. We got so good at killing each other that we had to invent rules about how to do it properly. Laws of war, Geneva Conventions, treaties about which weapons were too horrible to use. And you know what happened when someone broke those rules? The aide whispered something to Rextal. The Chancellor's posture shifted slightly, uncertain. We got even more creative. Marcus continued. One of our countries during what we called World War II was getting bombed every night by enemy aircraft. So they convinced their entire population that eating carrots would give them better night vision. That wasn't even the weird part. The weird part was that it was actually a cover story for secret radar technology. But the carrot thing stuck. We propagandized vegetables. For military purposes. This is absurd. Another country developed a bomb that could level entire cities. Used it twice. Then several other countries developed the same bombs. Then we all pointed these bombs at each other for 40 years in what we called the Cold War. Which wasn't actually cold, but also wasn't actually hot. And somehow we didn't blow ourselves up through sheer luck and the fact that a few people refused to push the button when their systems told them to. Marcus pulled out another cigarette, but didn't light it. Just rolled it between his fingers. We fought wars in the mud where millions died for a few miles of ground. We fought wars in jungles where you couldn't see your enemy until they were already shooting at you. We fought wars in deserts where the temperature could kill you before the enemy did. We fought wars in cities, house by house, room by room. We fought wars where 8-year-old kids were strapping explosives to themselves. We fought wars that lasted 100 years. We fought wars that lasted 6 days. We fought wars for good reasons, terrible reasons, and no reasons at all. The assembly hall had gone completely silent. Even the translator implants seemed to need a moment to process. And then, Marcus said, his voice dropping, we went to space. And you know what the first thing we did was? We looked around at all you peaceful, advanced, civilized species who'd never fought each other, who'd evolved past conflict, who thought war was a relic of primitive culture, and we thought, oh good, we can finally relax. He lit the cigarette. But you guys had to go and threaten us. Brixtal's confidence had visibly eroded. You are bluffing. Your species may have a violent past, but you lack the numbers, the technology, the strategic position to resist the collective. This is mathematical certainty. Here's another fun fact about humans, Marcus said. We're really good at math too, especially when it comes to figuring out how to win fights we shouldn't. You mentioned your 3 fleet groups, the 5th, 7th, and 9th. That's what, roughly 4,000 ships like you said, 4,173 to be precise. Great, love precision. Now those fleets are currently positioned at rally point Gamma 7, Epsilon 3 and Delta 9, right? Spreading out to cover more territory. Classic doctrine. Problem is those positions mean your supply lines are stretched across 7 systems, and your communication relay stations are all bunched up around the Kelvara Nebula. Pellerim's exoskeleton actually audibly clicked. How do you know our fleet positions? Marcus smiled. Because we've been spying on you since the moment you started mobilizing. We've got listening posts in 16 of your systems. We've infiltrated your logistics networks. We've bribed 3 of your quartermasters, corrupted 4 of your navigation systems, and convinced one of your admirals that he's suffering from a rare inner ear disease that requires regular medication which we're supplying. That's impossible. Our security protocols are unbreakable. Nothing's unbreakable. You just have to be creative, and patient, and willing to do things that proper civilized species would never think of. Marcus walked back to the table and sat on the edge of it, swinging his legs casually. For instance, you know those meteor showers that have been happening near your primary shipyards for the past 6 weeks? Vrixtol stared. Those weren't meteors. Those were sensor packages. We've been mapping your entire industrial complex. We know which facilities build your reactors, which ones fabricate your hull plating, and which ones make those little snacks your crews like. The purple ones, with the Krifta bars? Yeah, those. We know where every single Krifta bar comes from. And if this war actually starts, those facilities are going to have some really unfortunate accidents. The Chancellor's talons gouged marks into the podium. You would target our food supplies. That violates every rule of civilized warfare. Civilized warfare, Marcus repeated. That's adorable. See, we've got this saying on Earth. All's fair in love and war. You want to play civilized? Fine, we'll follow your rules right up until following your rules means losing. Then we'll cheat. We'll lie. We'll sabotage your supply lines, hack your computers, steal your ships, and turn your own allies against you. We'll fight dirty in ways you haven't even invented words for yet. This is barbaric. Yeah, Marcus agreed cheerfully. It really is. And here's the worst part. You started this. You're the ones who showed up with warships and ultimatums. You're the ones who threatened extinction. So when we do all those terrible, horrible, barbaric things to survive, that's on you. You made us remember what we're good at. He hopped off the table and walked toward the exit. The assembled species parted before him like water, none willing to get too close. So here's my counteroffer, Chancellor. You take your fleets, you go home, and you forget this ever happened. We'll do the same. No hard feelings. Maybe in a few years we can even be friends. Share some recipes. Trade some technology. Laugh about that time you almost declared war on the species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of creative violence. Rextal's voice shook. And if we refuse? Marcus stopped at the doorway. He looked back over his shoulder, and for just a moment something ancient and cold flickered in his eyes. Something that remembered bunkers and trenches, siege towers and carpet bombing, cavalry charges and drone strikes. Something that had looked at the stars and thought not about exploration but about conquest, not about peace but about survival. Then we'll show you what happens when you wake up. Something that was trying really, really hard to be civilized, he said quietly. And trust me, Chancellor, you really don't want that. He walked out. The assembly hall erupted into chaos. Delegates screamed in 17 different languages. The Pixari fainted en masse. The Grom began rumbling distress signals that shook the foundations. Pelrin rushed to Vrixtel's side as the Chancellor swayed on his feet. Sir? Sir, what do we do? Vrixtel stared at the door where the human had disappeared. His mandibles hung slack. His 12 fingers trembled. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Get me everything. Every piece of human history. Every war, every battle, every conflict. I want to know what we almost started. Sir. Surely he was exaggerating. They're a small species. Young. Unproven in galactic affairs. Did you see his eyes, Pelrim? Yes, sir. Then get me the files. Now. 3 hours later, Vrixtal sat alone in his office, surrounded by holographic displays. Images of Thermopylae, Verdun, Stalingrad, Normandy, Hanoi, Fallujah, videos of battleships sinking in flames, cities reduced to ash, soldiers charging into certain death, statistics about casualties that numbered in the millions, weapons that could end worlds, conflicts that lasted generations. His personal communicator buzzed. Admiral Cresfor of the Fifth Fleet. Chancellor, our scouts have detected unusual activity in human space. They're mobilized. Of course they are, sir. Should we proceed with the attack? Vrixtel looked at the display before him. A human soldier, face painted, rifle held ready, standing in a jungle somewhere. The caption read, Vietnam, 1968. Fight continued for 7 more years. Another display showed a mushroom cloud. Hiroshima, 140,000 dead. War continued. Another showed tanks rolling through snow. Battle of Stalingrad. 2 million casualties. Defenders held. Sir, stand down the fleets, Admiral. But we've already issued the declaration. I said stand down. Tell the collective we are entering negotiations. Tell them the humans have agreed to talks. Have they? They will. Because they know something we just learned. What's that, sir? Vrixtel closed the displays. In the darkness of his office he could still see Marcus Webb's smile. The casual way he'd lit that cigarette. The absolute confidence of someone who'd been here before. who'd fought impossible odds and survived. They know we're not ready to fight someone who thinks being outnumbered 13-1 is average odds. He said, they know we're not ready to fight someone who spent their entire evolution learning how to kill each other efficiently. They know we're not ready to fight someone who looks at peace as a temporary condition between wars. He stood up, feeling very old suddenly. They know we're not ready to fight humans, somewhere above the assembly hall in a human shuttle heading back to Earth. Marcus Webb poured himself a whiskey and put his feet up. His co-pilot, a woman named Riley Barnes, shook her head in amazement. You think they bought it, boss? Oh, they bought it. They're probably reading our history right now, scaring themselves with stories about World War II and Vietnam. Were you bluffing about the spy networks? Marcus sipped his drink. What do you think? Riley laughed. I think we've got maybe 3 listening posts and 1 compromised quartermaster who's selling us slightly expired rations. And that's all we need. Because here's the secret, Riley. We don't actually want to fight them. We just need them to think we're crazy enough to win. And humans? We've got 10,000 years of evidence that we're absolutely insane when it comes to warfare. So what happens now? Now they negotiate. They offer us better terms. We graciously accept. Everyone saves face. The galaxy stays peaceful. And we go back to being the friendly, slightly weird species that somehow survived their own adolescence. And if they call our bluff, Marcus's smile faded. He looked out at the stars, at the vast emptiness between worlds, at the countless civilizations that had never known war the way Earth had known war. Then we stop bluffing, he said simply, and we show them why humans don't start fights. But we sure as hell finish them. The shuttle jumped to faster than light speed, leaving the Sovereign Collective behind. And in the assembly hall, as Rickstoll continued reading about something called the Amu War where humans had somehow lost to large birds, he made a note to himself, never, ever threaten humans again. Some species evolved for peace. Humans evolved in spite of it. That made all the difference. 3 days after the declaration that wasn't, Ambassador Marcus Webb found himself back on Earth, sitting in a cramped office in Geneva that smelled like burnt coffee and bureaucratic desperation. Across from him sat Director Helen Zhao of the Unified Earth Defense Council, and she looked about as happy as someone who just discovered their insurance didn't cover alien invasions. You told them we've been spying on them for 6 weeks, Helen said, her voice flat. We've been spying on them for 6 weeks, right? Marcus examined his fingernails. Define spying, Marcus. Okay, so technically we have 3 listening posts, 1 corrupt quartermaster who trades us expired food for Earth coffee, and a very enthusiastic intern named Kevin, who learned their language by watching their equivalent of reality television. Helen closed her eyes, took a breath, opened them again. You bluffed our way out of a war with 3 listening posts and Kevin's very good at his job. Kevin thinks their word for battleship translates to angry space whale. And he's not wrong. Have you seen their ships? Very whale-like. Aggressive whales. Helen stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Outside, life continued as normal. People walked dogs, bought groceries, complained about traffic. They had no idea how close they'd come to becoming a footnote in galactic history. The collective is requesting formal negotiation. They want to discuss mutual defense treaties, trade agreements, and cultural exchange programs. See? Worked perfectly. They also want reassurances that we won't target their snack food production facilities. That one I wasn't bluffing about. We actually did map those. They're surprisingly centralized. Poor strategic planning. Helen turned back to face him. Marcus, what happens when they realize we're not the terrifying war machines you painted us as? What happens when they figure out that most of our fleet is held together with spare parts and hope, that our newest destroyer class has a critical design flaw that makes the toilets back up during combat maneuvers? Marcus lit another cigarette, ignoring the no smoking sign on the wall. They won't. How can you be so sure? Because I gave them something more powerful than actual military strength. I gave them doubt. He blew smoke toward the ceiling. Right now, Chancellor Rickstoll is reading every piece of human history he can find. He's learning about the Mongol invasions and the 100 Years' War and the Napoleonic campaigns. He's discovering that humans once fought a war that lasted 30 years over religion. 30 years, Helen. Most species can't stay mad at each other for 30 days. So your plan is to scare them with our past. My plan is to make them understand that fighting humans is unpredictable. That even if they win militarily, they'll lose economically, politically, and psychologically. That occupying human space would be like trying to hold onto a live grenade. Sure, you can do it, but why would you want to? Helen sat back down, rubbing her temples. The council wants you to lead the negotiation team. Absolutely not. Marcus. Helen, I'm good at exactly one thing, making people nervous. You send me to actual negotiations, and I'll probably start a war by accident. Or on purpose. It's a coin flip really. Then who do you suggest? Marcus thought for a moment. Send Kim Foster. She's smart, diplomatic, actually reads briefing documents. Plus she bakes cookies. Everyone likes cookies. You want me to send the fate of humanity into negotiations backed by baked goods? You'd be surprised how far cookies can get you in diplomacy. The Pixari delegation almost cried when Kim gave them snickerdoodles last year. Helen made a note. Fine. Foster leads negotiations. You stay here and... What exactly will you be doing? Me? I'm going to visit our military research facilities. If the collective calls our bluff, I want to make sure we actually have something to back it up with. Our research budget was cut by 30% last quarter. Then I guess we'll have to get creative. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood in a classified facility 300 meters below the Australian outback, watching a demonstration that would either save humanity or get him court-martialed. Probably both. Dr. Lisa Park, head of experimental weapons development, looked like she hadn't slept in 4 days. She probably hadn't. Her team consisted of 12 engineers, 6 physicists, and what appeared to be a philosophy professor for some reason. Okay, Lisa said, pulling up a holographic display. You asked for weapons that would make the collective think twice. We've got 3 projects in various stages of please don't let this kill us all. Love the confidence. Show me. Project Boomerang. Missiles that refuse to miss. We've programmed them with a learning algorithm based on the hunting patterns of African wild dogs. The missile pack communicates with each other, corners their target, and adapts to evasive maneuvers in real time. Marcus watched the simulation. 3 missiles chasing a drone through an obstacle course. The drone juked left. 2 missiles cut it off. The drone tried to go vertical. The 3rd missile was already there. The drone exploded. How many tests have you run? 47. We haven't missed once. The missiles are so persistent that we had to add a self-destruct command because they kept circling the testing range looking for targets after exercises ended. That's either brilliant or terrifying. Why not both? Lisa pulled up another display. Project Poltergeist. Cyber warfare suite that doesn't just hack enemy systems, it makes them think they're being haunted. I'm sorry, what? A technician jumped in, excited. We realize that most alien species are more advanced than us technologically, right? Their computer systems are sophisticated, complex, interconnected, so we can't compete on raw power. But we can compete on weirdness. The technician pulled up a video. A Cortex warship simulator. Suddenly the lights began flickering. Doors opened and closed randomly. The environmental system started playing what sounded like children laughing. Equipment turned on by itself. The crew thinks they're experiencing system malfunctions. The technician continued. But really, we're just messing with them. Imagine being in the middle of a battle and your coffee maker starts brewing at maximum output, flooding the bridge with coffee, or your navigation system starts giving directions to tourist attractions, or every display screen shows the same cryptic message. We're watching you. Marcus stared at the screen. This is psychological warfare through annoyance. Exactly. And the best part is, they'll waste days trying to fix systems that aren't actually broken. By the time they realize it's an attack, we've already moved on to the next phase, which is making their toilets play opera music. I love this team. Lisa pulled up the 3rd display, her expression turning serious. Project Longshot. This one's not funny. This one's for if everything goes wrong. The schematic showed something that looked like a conventional human ship, but with a reactor configuration Marcus didn't recognize. What am I looking at? A ship that travels at 0.99 the speed of light. No weapons. No shields. Just mass and velocity. Einstein's favorite equation turned into a delivery system. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. A relativistic kill vehicle. Accelerate enough mass to near light speed and you don't need explosives. The kinetic energy alone would crack a planet. We could target their homeworld, their shipyards, their central command. They'd have maybe 6 hours warning before impact. No defense in the galaxy can stop something moving that fast. This is a planet killer. This is mutually assured destruction. This is the weapon you never want to use but absolutely need to have. Because if they know we have it, if they know we're crazy enough to build it, they'll never push us to the point where we'd use it. Marcus walked around the hologram studying it from every angle. The ship was elegant in its simplicity. No complexity. Just thrust, guidance and enough stubbornness to cross interstellar space on a one-way trip. How long to build one? We've already built 3. They're in orbit, unmanned, automated, waiting. The room went silent. Even the other researchers seemed uncomfortable with the implications. Does the council know? Lisa shook her head. You're the first person outside this facility we've told. We figured if anyone would understand the necessity, it'd be you. Marcus thought about Drixatel reading human history. Thought about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Thought about the Cold War and all those missiles pointed at each other for 40 years. Thought about how humanity had looked into the abyss of its own destructive potential and somehow decided to step back. Keep them ready, he said finally. But keep them secret. This is our insurance policy. The thing we never talk about, never threaten with, never even acknowledge exists unless there's absolutely no other choice. And if there's no other choice, then we hope we're as good at negotiating as we are at building doomsday weapons. Meanwhile, 17 light-years away, Chancellor Rixtel sat in a secure conference room with the collective's top military strategists. Holographic displays surrounded them, showing everything they'd learned about humanity in the past 3 weeks. Admiral Kreshfor pointed to a timeline. They fought a war called the Emu War where they lost to large flightless birds. Encouraging, said General Thexerin. They also fought 2 wars that engulfed their entire planet. The second one ended with weapons that could destroy cities. They used less encouraging. Frixtal watched footage of human history. Gladiators fighting in arenas for entertainment. Medieval knights charging into battle. Samurai perfecting the art of the sword for centuries. Soldiers storming beaches under withering fire. Pilots flying planes into enemy ships. What are we seeing here? An intelligence officer spoke up. A species that treats combat as culture. They write songs about battles. They build monuments to wars. They teach their children about historical conflicts the way we teach ours about mathematics. War isn't something that happened to them. It's something they did, repeatedly. Often simultaneously. Surely they've evolved past this, have they? Their entertainment industry produces thousands of hours of content about warfare every year. Movies, games, books, simulations. They consume violence recreationally. Not as cautionary tales but as drama, adventure, even comedy. Another display activated, showing human military academies. They have institutions dedicated to teaching warfare, universities of combat. They study ancient battles like we study physics. They analyze tactics from conflicts thousands of years old. They haven't forgotten how to fight. They've systematized it. Frixtel felt his confidence eroding further. What about their actual military capability? Strip away the psychology. Can they fight us? Admiral Kreshfor pulled up fleet comparisons. Ship to ship, we outclass them. Our weapons have longer range, better accuracy, stronger shields. One-on-one we win every time, but they don't fight one-on-one. Every tactical simulation we've run shows they favor asymmetric warfare. Ambushes, hit and run attacks. They'll sacrifice smaller ships to disable larger ones. They'll ram us if they run out of ammunition. Their combat doctrine assumes they're going to be outnumbered and outgunned. They've planned for it, General Thexerin added. We also found references to something called guerrilla warfare. Irregular tactics, sabotage, assassination, attacking supply lines instead of armies, making occupation impossible even after military victory. They've written thousands of texts on how to fight when you've already lost. That's insane. That's humans. Frixtel stood and walked to the window overlooking his homeworld. Beautiful blue oceans, peaceful cities, orbital stations where millions lived in harmony. His species had known war once, millennia ago, before they'd evolved past such primitive behavior, before they joined the collective and embraced civilization, and now he'd almost brought that ancient horror back by threatening a species that never stopped practicing it. Call off the war, he said quietly. Sir, the entire collective will see this as weakness. Better they see us as weak than extinct. He turned back to his advisors. These humans, they offered us a way out. Negotiations, treaties, peace. Not because they're afraid of us, but because they don't want to fight. Do you understand how terrifying that is? A species that good at warfare choosing not to wage it. The room fell silent. It means they're confident they'd win. Frixital continued. It means they've already wargamed every scenario and decided the cost isn't worth it. It means they're offering us peace not from a position of weakness, but from a position of confidence. They don't need to prove anything. They already know what they're capable of. He sat back down heavily. Accept their terms, whatever they want. Trade agreements, territorial concessions, technology sharing, will be the ones who chose diplomacy over destruction. History will remember us for our wisdom. And the humans, history will forget they were ever a threat. Because they'll make sure of it. They'll be friendly, helpful, eager to cooperate. And we'll never, ever forget that underneath that friendly exterior is something that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of creative violence. Back on Earth, in the Geneva office, Helen Zhao read the message from the collective 3 times to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. They're accepting all our terms. Trade agreements, mutual defense pact, open borders for civilian travel. They're even offering to share their medical technology. Marcus, sitting with his feet on her desk, nodded. Told you it would work. They're also requesting that you specifically not be involved in any future diplomatic functions. That's fair. They used the phrase for the psychological well-being of our delegation. Also fair. Helen set down the message and looked at him. You know we got lucky, right? If they'd called our bluff, if they'd actually attacked, we'd have been in serious trouble. Maybe. Or maybe we'd have surprised ourselves. Humans are pretty good at rising to occasions. Usually the worst occasions, but still, is that really what you believe? That we could have won? Marcus swung his feet off the desk and stood up. I believe that winning isn't the same as surviving. And humans are absolutely excellent at surviving. We survived ice ages, and plagues and ourselves. We survived every stupid decision our ancestors made. We survived long enough to get to space despite the best efforts of reality. So yeah, maybe we wouldn't have won a straight fight, but we'd have made them regret starting one. He headed for the door, then paused. Besides, the best victory is the one you don't have to fight for. The battle you win by making the other guy decide it's not worth fighting. That's real strategy. That's the stuff they teach at those military academies I mentioned to Vrextop. Do we actually have military academies focused on ancient warfare? Helen, we have people who spend their entire lives studying how Romans arrange their infantry formations. We have enthusiasts who recreate medieval battles for fun. We have academic departments dedicated to analyzing why cavalry charges stopped working. Of course we have military academies studying ancient warfare. We never stopped being curious about the best ways to organize violence. He opened the door. Marcus? Yeah? Thank you. For keeping us out of a war we probably couldn't win. He smiled. That's the thing about war, Helen. Nobody really wins. Some people just lose less. And I figured humanity's lost enough already. Time we tried something different. Peace. Peace, he agreed. At least until someone else decides to threaten us. Then we'll dust off Kevin and the Angry Space Whale translations and do this whole dance again. He left. Helen sat alone in her office looking at the acceptance message from the collective. Her computer pinged with a new file, classified from Dr. Lisa Park. She opened Project Longshot Status Report. 3 vessels operational. Location classified. Awaiting orders that will hopefully never come. Helen deleted the message and its backups. Some things were better left as shadows, whispers, insurance policies that existed only in the nightmares of those who might threaten Earth. Outside her window the sun was setting. People were going home to families, to dinners, to arguments about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Normal life. Peaceful life. The life that Marcus Webb and people like him made possible by understanding that the best weapon was the one you never had to use. And the best war was the one you never had to fight. Somewhere in space, aboard a collective monitoring station, a junior analyst named Pelorix was reviewing human communication intercepts when she noticed something odd. A message fragment, heavily encrypted between Earth and their outer colonies. She decrypted it, read it twice, then flagged it for her supervisor. The message was simple. Boomerang operational. Poltergeist deployed. Longshot holding position. Status green. Her supervisor reviewed it, went pale and immediately classified it at the highest security level with a note. Do not investigate further. Do not share. File under reasons we made peace. The fragment was buried in classified archives where it would gather digital dust for centuries. A small reminder that sometimes the scariest thing about humans wasn't what they showed you, it was what they kept hidden. And in the grand scheme of the galaxy, as new species joined the collective and learned about the known civilizations, humanity became something of a curiosity. The friendly species with the violent past, the ones who'd bring cookies to diplomatic functions and could discuss philosophy for hours, but whose history was a minefield of cautionary tales about what happens when you corner something that refuses to give up. Young species asking for advice on dealing with humans were always told the same thing. Be polite, be professional, be ready to leave if things get weird, and whatever you do, never ever threaten them. They'll smile, They'll negotiate, they'll seem completely reasonable, and then 6 weeks later you'll discover they've been mapping your infrastructure and corrupting your supply chains and building things in orbit that you really don't want to think about. So they're dangerous? No. They're unpredictable. Which is worse. Dangerous species you can calculate, plan for, contain. Unpredictable species. They might give you cookies. They might start a war. They might do both simultaneously. You just never know. Then how do we handle them? Simple. Don't make them remember what they're good at. Keep them focused on exploration, science, culture, trade. Let them be the version of themselves they're trying to be. Not the version they used to be. Because that old version? That's still in there. Sleep. And trust me, you don't want to be the one who wakes it up. And so the galaxy learned to live with humanity. The strange species from the little blue planet in the Orion Spur. The ones with the contradictions built in. The ones who'd cry at sad movies and build doomsday weapons. The ones who'd fight to the death for abstract concepts like freedom and honor and justice, but would also negotiate for hours to avoid fighting at all. The ones who'd look at impossible odds and shrug, because humans had learned something over their long, violent history. Something they carried with them into the stars. That surviving was more important than winning. That peace was worth fighting for. That the best victory was the one where everyone got to go home. But if you absolutely insisted on war, if you refused every off-ramp and olive branch, if you pushed them into that corner where survival was the only option left, well, then they'd show you what 10,000 years of practice looked like, and nobody wanted that, not even the humans. Especially not the humans. They remembered, and sometimes, remembering was enough.